Devastating news has surfaced from Arsenal as the all-time WSL goalscorer and the all-time Dutch international goalscorer Vivianne Miedema has been ruled out with an ACL injury. Let's talk about it. With Viv now being added into the ACL injury list, which is a horrifyingly long list, 25% of the Ballon d'Or nominees this year are out with an ACL injury. That would be 1 in 5. From that 25% pile is the winner, Alexia Putellas, and the runner-up, Beth Mead. This last bit of news is pretty horrific, not only because it's another ACL injury, but I think it's kind of the last straw to this injury crisis, pandemic, epidemic, whatever you want to call it, that we are currently seeing. I mean, week in and week out. It's happening every single match day. It's happening every single weekend. It's happening every midweek game. It's absolutely going out of hand. Now, one thing I want to establish is we all know injuries are unavoidable. They happen. It's a sport. It's a contact sport. You're likely going to get injured. Injuries are part of the game. Absolutely, that's understandable. But those injuries are also preventable, especially those traumatic knee injuries that take a toll on any athlete's career, whether they're playing football or basketball or any kind of career. You're going to be sidelined for at least 9 to 12 months, and we know that affects your personal life just outside of your career anyway. I've been a pretty big advocate on how we should tackle this issue. I previously had an interview with an ACL researcher that talked about all things ACL and female athletes. I highly recommend you check out, because not only was she able to tell me what the current research tells us, she talked about the different links, the different funding, the prevention programs. I mean, everything around how we should tackle this issue is relatively known to us, and we began to understand that ACL injuries are not one-dimensional. It's not because, you have a female anatomy, you're more prone to ACL injuries, and that's why we have a higher rates in female sports. It's really not that. There's so many other aspects that come before the whole female anatomy that we are simply not addressing well enough. There still remains this something called a research gap. It's not the gap that we're not doing enough research, it's the gap of doing the research, taking our conclusions, but not actually doing much with them and not actually imposing them. We're not funding those conclusions. An added lag where those clubs aren't maybe necessarily able to collect certain data, or they're not able to share that data with the scientific individuals, the sciencey students, the PhD candidates that are doing that research. And so you have a gap that only gets bigger and bigger, and then there's not as much collaboration as there should be. So you have a predisposition that's not being addressed enough. You have prevention programs that are not being funded enough. You have medical staff not being provided into these clubs. You have rehab opportunities that are not given the chance to actually produce their benefits because of schedule congestion. We can sit here and talk about schedule congestion for days. I mean, the topic is a long one. I've also made a video on that. I recommend you check it out. I compared the 2022 and the 2023 schedules, and it's kind of shocking that it's actually a bit worse next year. Alexia Putellas, Katoto, Beth Mead, Miedema, those are all happening within just months, not even months apart, weeks apart from each other. And that is hugely impacted by the fact that these players are going from Olympics to Euros to World Cup to Olympics to, it's constantly nonstop. Every single year they have a competition to compete in. And some might say, well, that's great. We want to see international football grow. We want to see more fixtures. And as I completely agree with you with that, but if we want to amplify the amount of fixtures, we also must amplify the amount of funding that we're putting into our prevention program. You can't have fixtures be this far up high and then the prevention programs are still lacking below. This is going to be a gap that is going to result in injuries. And instead of FIFA coming out and kind of altering these international windows, some of them are completely useless, and I will stand by that. Instead of actually recognizing there's an issue and kind of mandating maybe prevention programs, nope, they're coming out with more fixtures, they're coming out with more windows. And the news also just surfaced that FIFA has rejected for the Women's World Cup to have 26 players in the squad. And the reason that they had for it is that bigger nations or better well-rounded nations are going to have a bigger advantage than those that are still kind of catching up to them, mainly because they will have a bigger pool of talented players to choose from. I don't know if I agree with that, because if you're trying to aid and help those lower nations actually grow, then giving more players international chances and opportunities and making sure there's more players involved in the association, in the football federation, is probably going to demand a bit more money, which the federation, if you're going to a World Cup, you'd like to think it's going to get funded. And so this gap that they're talking about, I've studied it, and I don't think it would actually appear. Germany, who are a tank of a team, whether they have 23 players or 26 players, they're still going to have a strong team, and they're still going to have a deep bench, regardless if you're giving them 26 or 23. But those 3 added players help for better rotation. They help for in case of injuries. They help if one of your players picks up a nick in training, you're able to somewhat bench them and have somebody replace them. This is why we need 26 players. It's necessary. It's just regular safety procedures that teams and nations need to feel safe in having. If we continue to see this very alarming trend, we might tune in to the World Cup next year and half of these players are sidelined with injury. People are going to start going to games, and a lot of these core players of a team, a lot of their favorite players, their role models even, are going to be out with injury. It's not going to be enjoyable. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously a team surrounds more than just 2 or 3 players, but again, it takes away from the game a little bit. And I'm pretty gutted about this. My heart is aching. There's a dozen handful of players that I really enjoy watching because they have a unique playing style, and one of them is Vivianne Miedema because her IQ, or the way she moves, the way she perceives the game, is very different, and it's so enjoyable to watch. She just had a 1-year extension with Arsenal, and even though they didn't have a very busy summer window, they had big aspirations. And obviously Beth Mead was on form. A lot of their players have been on form. They've been doing good on international level. They've been able to convert that form both on international and on club football. They had a pretty good start to the Champions League. It looked like the season was going to produce good things for Arsenal. And do I think they can produce good things? I think so, but they would have to get really busy in the January window. There's been rumors flying around that Dabinia from the NWSL North Carolina Courage is going to join them, and if that happens, I mean, I would absolutely love to see it. I think if that happens, that would be huge for Arsenal. Dabinia is an absolute beast. She's another player that I really enjoy watching her. For Brazil, she has been crucial for the games that they've been able to win. They just won the Copa America. I mean, Dabinia is a great player to have on your roster, and if Arsenal are really seriously after her, I think that would kind of restore more hope. Miedema had also just came back from a break. She took off the international break and looked like she was back on form. 4 goals out of 4 has been really important for the UCL wins that Arsenal have been able to claim. And it's quite a shame. Yeah, I don't think this is fun to see at all. Actually, I'm just taking a look at my wall here, a wall of players that I really thoroughly enjoy watching. So we've got Christine Press there. Don't think Macari is on here. We've got Miedema now. We've got Alexia Putellas. Fleming and the Chelsea gals are all healthy. We've got Mead. I mean, the wall is filled with ACL injuries. I don't like it. So it looks like I got a little bit too excited showing off my wall and disconnected my microphone from the camera. Unfortunately, that's why the next bit and the outro is going to be a little bit slightly more on the echo side, so I hope that's not too much of an inconvenience. But I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you agree with anything that I've said? Do you think it's just simply nature of the sport that we have to deal with? Is it something that's preventable? Is it avoidable? Let's hear it. I again urge and recommend you check out my interview with the ACL researcher. We really do talk about a lot of questions that are going on. She has a lot of great answers for a lot of the wondering questions, pondering questions going on, and I think there's a lot of information we can take away from it. Schedule congestion, I again was also able to break down 3 players, look at their workload leading up to that injury, and there's a blunt and clear connection between the amount of games that they had and when they sustained the injury. Also, make sure you follow me on Twitter. I'm pretty active on having good threads specifically on ideas like this, on topic, on conversations where they're relatively educational. So if you want to pick up a knowledge thing here or there, follow me on Twitter. And as always, to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me down below. I will see you later.